Okay, so this is going to be the final episode of the Mech series, unless you want to request something that I haven't mentioned before. And in this episode, I have a theoretical mechanism which I actually never made. It might be a bad mechanism, and I don't know, so I don't want to risk it. And in the Light S 4x4, I went with the Huachuang mechanism plus the normal XB alignment mechanism. Before you understand this imaginary mechanism, I have to explain one cube, which is the Guoguan Yuexiao, and it's not with me, but I'm going to use a modern cube, in this case a GTS2, to explain it, because this feature that the Yuexiao made is basically used in almost every cube after it. And that is, if you look at the center stock here, all you can see is a screw. So in the past cubes, the center actually has a stock that goes down, but in the Yuexiao and beyond, the stock is being removed and is replaced by an internal pillar inside the centerpiece. I'm not too sure if you can see it from here. It's actually blocked by the screw, but right at the very bottom of that centerpiece, there's an upward pillar to take over the function of the center stock, which is to prevent it from shaking. By getting rid of the center stock, you can actually make pieces very thin. So if you see this piece here, this part here is extremely thin, and on top of that, Moi did something that I didn't see any of the rival companies doing, which is they changed their screws to a super thin screw. So these screws are 2mm thin. Because of that, all the pieces of the outer layer, which is, if you look at it from this angle or if you look at the corner, it's actually the same line. The corner base can be made very big, and it can extend as far in as, like, with only the screw limiting how far the corner can expand. And that's why Moi decided to go with the thinnest screws. Since I'm such a big 4x4 fan, I wanted to see if this works on an even cube. Because of that, I started to think of ways to make a 4x4 with floating centers. But there is a problem. The XB alignment mechanism contains this center pillar that cannot move. And how is it prevented from moving? It has to extend all the way down to the core and stick to the core, and there's some internal interlocking parts that will stop this circle piece from moving, and only the square around it can move. And the reason why this thing is not allowed to move is because the bumps have a very specific position to be in if they want to keep the alignment mechanism. If not, if you have one bump that moves out of the way, then you will have like 2 misaligned bumps and you will lock 3 layers together instead of like 2 layers, which is the internal and one of these slices. The first thing I thought about was going back to the Ishin alignment mechanism, and that's because the Ishin alignment mechanism is based around the core, it's not based around the top. If there's an alignment mechanism based on the top, then it has to link all the way down and you need some connection. But if it's from the core itself and the top does not need to stay in a line, then the core doesn't need to touch the bottom anymore, and that is what the Ishin mechanism does. But the problem is, it's not applicable to all types of cubes. Only cubes like the Shengshou or the Weichuang GTS has very long pillars in the second layer, whereas in some cubes like the Aosu, this piece is also quite shallow. Of course, it does have this downward peg because the upper part of the mechanism is similar to the Ishin, but the bottom part of the mechanism is more similar to the V cube and X cube, and it contains this very big part here that belongs to the first layer, and obviously I can't use the Ishin alignment mechanism. I ended up with this very strange mechanism that I came up with. So this ties all the way back to the Moi Huachuang, where you have 2 centerpieces. But what I did here was I took the XB alignment mechanism that usually exists on the top and I put it to the bottom. Because most cubes only have 1 of this umbrella-like structure, but in the Hua mechanism you have 2. So I just thought of what if the XB alignment mechanism isn't in the top one. Because of that, I can actually have this piece to float above the other one. And if you look at some of the lower pieces here, this just looks like a normal XB piece. And so does this. This is like the circular ring, like here. And the other one is like this upper piece with a bump. Because of that, this piece can float, it doesn't need to touch the core, and you can have a very thin second layer at one point. I mean third layer in this case, because this is the middle layer. I can make this part very thin. I didn't make it super thin here, but assuming that you have a very strong ABS plastic like the Moi plastic or something, you can actually, I don't know whether you can make it as thin as the GTS2, it looks a bit weird and I think that's going to break. But you can at least make it like 3 or 4mm thick. And the benefit of that is that usually in a 3x3, you make the corner base very big, because now this layer is thin. in this piece, okay, this, if you have a Huachuang right now, you can actually disassemble it and look at this particular piece. For this piece here, since the neighboring piece is thin, I can actually make this part a bit bigger. And the same can be said about the edges. So I'm not too sure if this is going to make a more stable mechanism that is harder to pop, or is it just going to make a mechanism that's way too rigid and has more features for things to catch. It can be good and bad, and this is what I'm not too sure about, and I don't really want to risk publishing this mechanism, but it's just a crazy idea that I came up with. Yeah, if you want to look at the corner, this corner is no different from a standard Huachuang corner, so not very worth showing. And this piece, okay, this piece is actually more complicated than it is, but because when I did the initial cuts for this mechanism, it actually has an additional very thin tail that comes out and hooks underneath this piece. I just remove it so that I can make it nicer, but on second thoughts, it might be better. You have this extra hook here to serve as some kind of anti-popping mechanism as well, and if you remember, this piece actually has quite a bad reputation of popping out in some of the older 4x4s, but I think from the Aosu onwards they kind of got rid of it, but it's always nice to have extra reinforcement. So there's a chance that this may work, but I don't have enough evidence to prove it.